number 36. This is interesting. Last week we had 6 duos in the countdown. This week we have 7. Now, 7 is more than I can remember having been on American Top 40 for the past 5 or 6 years. It's England Dan and John Ford Coley with I'd Really Love to See You Tonight. And I don't want to change your life. England Dan and John Ford Coley at number 36, moving up 4, second week on the chart with I'd Really Love to See You Tonight.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood on American Top 40, and right now we're up to the current hit by a man who followed his older brother to California 7 years ago to save him from a strange new religion. The older brother is Jim Seals of Seals and Crofts, and the younger brother is Dan Seals, one half of the duo known as England Dan and John Ford Coley. Well, back in 1972, older brother Jim Seals, along with his partner Dash Crofts, was just beginning to make his mark on the pop charts. And about the same time, both Seals and Crofts decided to join a Persian religion called Baha'i. It's a fairly new faith as organized religions go, just over 100 years old. And it teaches a universal faith and equality among all men and women. Well, at the time Jim Seals joined up, not much was known about that religion by the general public, which made it sound like some weird, far-out cult to his family back home in Texas. So Jim's younger brother, Dan Seals, took it upon himself to come out here and save Jim. When he arrived, Dan was determined to talk his older brother back to his senses. And Jim was plenty willing to talk all right. In fact, the two brothers spent 2 full days talking nonstop. And when they were through, younger brother Dan had decided that he would join the Baha'i faith himself. The rescuer had become a believer. And his partner, John Ford Coley, had become a believer too. And along with Dan Seals, he's spreading the word about their faith wherever people will listen. This week, England Dan and John Ford Coley have the 23rd most popular song in America. England Dan and John Ford Coley. They peaked at number 21 last week. This week they fall to 23 with It's Sad to Belong.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
Well, now we're up to the latest hit by a duo who got their big break during an Elton John American tour. The band that was supposed to open for Elton canceled, but England Dan and John Ford Coley were available, and that exposure led to a record contract. This week, Dan and John move up 11 notches to number 21 with Love Is the Answer. England Dan and John Ford Coley at number 21, second week on the chart, moving up 11 with Love Is the Answer.
Casey's Coast to Coast. American Top 40.
Now we're up to the current smash by a recording act who once gave Hollywood 1 week to discover them. And it did. 7 years ago, nobody but their mothers knew who England Dan and John Ford Coley were. They left their home state of Texas, came to Hollywood for just 1 week. 2 green, hopeful young men determined to get their big break. And luck was with them. Almost immediately, they landed a 1-week gig at a local nightclub. Now, that would have encouraged any struggling musician to keep at it. But not this pair. By the end of the week, when nothing else was happening for them, John and Dan gave a tape recording of one of their performances to a friend. And they asked him to play it for whoever would listen. Then they drove back to Texas, and to the security of the jobs they'd left just 1 week earlier. Dan was a house painter, and John pitched hay and did odd jobs at the rodeo. 1 week after they returned home, they got the surprise of their lives. A long-distance phone call from the founder of A&M Records, Herb Alpert. He'd just heard their tape recording and wanted the duo to come back to Hollywood and sign a recording contract. It was an incredible 1 in a million stroke of good luck for the 2 young musicians. That was 7 years ago. These days, the duo records for Atlantic Records. And this week, their 6th top 40 hit is up to number 10. Here are England Dan and John Ford Coley, and Love Is the Answer. England Dan and John Ford Coley, second week at number 10 with Love Is the Answer.
The hits from coast to coast.